Hey carvers, welcome back. I am so excited. Today is our RV kitchen before and after. See how we turned our outdated RV kitchen into the farmhouse kitchen of our dreams. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hi there, I'm Elisa. After years in the tech industry, I was exhausted by the pressure. So I quit the capitalist hustle. Now I live in a tiny house with my partner and pup, learning to live simply and stress-free. I share that journey here. Hit subscribe and join us in the slow carve. I'm so excited to be sharing our RV kitchen finally. It's been months of a work in progress, but the details are just about ready and I just can't wait anymore. So beforehand, when we bought the RV, she was about 21 years old. So we inherited some pretty outdated cosmetics. This included some really nice, warm, Spanish sun style, orangey kind of cabinets that we wanted to make sure that we refaced. This almost like terrazzo, kind of like crushed marbly countertop that was green, more of a spew color than anything else. A lot of silver hardware, including some of those kind of traditional push locks, for example, that were good as far as securing the cabinets, but didn't do much as far as making this feel like a home or being anything like our style. So there was a lot that we needed to change cosmetically. So like I've mentioned in previous videos, there are kind of two elements in designing our RV for full-time living. It was function and feel. So making sure that we could safely live in the space, be in transit without any issues, and also feel at home wherever we are. As far as the feel of the kitchen, we really wanted it to feel farmhousey. Despite living in Barcelona, which is, considered a beach town or right there on the ocean, we're more kind of mountain people. So we wanted our space to feel more kind of countryside, more mountainy, and we chose to do a farmhouse aesthetic, kind of a mix between eclectic English and maybe French farmhouse to make it uniquely ours. So in looking for farmhouse inspiration, we tried to find some that still had that kind of take on utilitarian tools that were beautifully made, but also things like hanging storage, colorful details, more natural woods. So all of those pieces influenced the eventual design. We just had to get creative about how we implemented it because we were living in an RV. So this big, sexy butcher's block wasn't necessarily realistic as far as weight goes. So instead, we came up with another solution. So the number one function we had to consider in this space especially was safety and making sure that kind of heavy jars weren't going to be flying about when we were in transit. So one of the ways that we resolved that was just ensuring that the cabinets closed securely and that we had some hanging space so that we could put things up on the wall and secure them with some give, so if they needed to swing a little bit, but they wouldn't come flying off. The other benefit to these is they free up a lot of the counter space. So I can use this for chopping things up, actually cooking a dinner, instead of having to kind of puzzle piece things around. Things are hanging up and accessible at all times, which is really lovely. As far as storage solutions in this space, obviously that's going to be something super important for a tiny house. What we did was actually add an extra little bit of shelving up here in this one cabinet, which is where we keep our spices. Originally we had everything kind of sat down on this one shelf and then there was just wasted space above. Instead, by adding the little shelf, we can stash all of our spices up at the top, and then we have a bunch of extra room for kind of dried goods here. We also removed the toaster oven, which has enabled so much extra storage, which is super nice. And we'll use the freezer when we're not plugged into the mains. We'll use this as kind of dried goods or heavy goods like beans or something that's more of a kind of a projectile risk in the freezer. It's also the sturdiest lock, so this gives us some really nice protection kind of in transit and isn't at risk of kind of flying out. So the first thing I tackled was actually the cabinets, and they were quite the monster of a project. So I needed to sand everything back. The original stain was quite glossy and super warm, so I needed to sand it back, prime it, and then paint it. The funny thing is, in choosing this color, this was actually the first detail that we knew we wanted in the RV. Even before we knew which RV we were going to have, it was something that Chris and I both really liked. So we knew we were going with it. So I picked 2 samples up before we picked up the RV. Thing is, on moving day, the world went back into lockdown. So we didn't really have the option if we didn't like the samples. And I was too excited to wait. So we ended up going with the one that was closest to the idea that we had and just kind of went for it. And matter of fact, it was probably my poor Spanish, but the sample size I got was huge, and we managed to get everything painted in this one little bucket of paint. From there, I also needed to cover the original countertop. So to kind of emulate that butcher block top, I ended up doing a contact paper, or like a film cover. That was painstaking. There are so many things that I had to work around, like the sink and the stove. It was quite the project, especially by myself, and we only had one roll, so I was trying really hard not to screw it up. Are you done? There were two projects in particular that were like headache inducing, way more complicated than originally intended, and that actually happens to be what was supposed to be the simplest project, which was the handles. I was like, oh yeah, we'll like unscrew them and stick them back in, and that was my thought coming in. Once I was in the RV, I realized that they were the push lock things, and they left gaping holes in the cupboards, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do to solve that. In the end, we came up with this kind of creative solution. I remember one night like falling asleep and having this almost like aha moment that like woke me up. We ended up getting dowel rod and hand cutting it to fit the width of the cabinet door. Use that, hand pounded them to fill the holes, and then drilled in the screws, like pre-drilled for the actual handles. It was like hammer and chisel style, but I loved it. They have come out to be kind of these like little jewels. They felt like little earrings for the kitchen. I think they really tied the aesthetic together, especially this one. It's kind of special piece. I spent something stupid on kind of one handle, but seeing as the luxury of living in a tiny space is you don't have to have a ton of supplies. Like, you can splurge on some more expensive, more meaningful pieces because you only have to buy one or two of them, or not much in the way of square footage. So yeah, I think this was maybe close to $20 for a handle, but we only needed one. And actually this ended up being the easiest one to install. The other super challenging project, and it wasn't that it was challenging so much that it was time consuming, was painting the sink. So this whole countertop is one singular piece of, I don't know, some sort of kind of plasticky fibrous thing. So when I put the contact paper on, the sink was still that original green speckle. The catch with painting the sink, to make it look more like a farmhouse sink, each layer has to thoroughly dry for several days. So layer by layer, doing this and actually the bathroom at the same time, we ended up having to be with no running water for almost 3 weeks, which I think is probably the closest I saw Chris get to cracking in the renovating while we were living in the space, was when we didn't have the option of running water in the space. So that was quite challenging, and it's held up okay. Just silicone the edges to try to get it to better attach to the contact film, and it's held up all right. Another little exciting space that I almost forgot is what we call the duket, which I think is like a colloquial Scottish term, but basically like this little like nook where we keep our doggy treats, where in the last year we had our masks, and I've put little like what would have been hooks, but I think I just used knobs, and we have our keychain there. So we're able to kind of grab and go as we're walking out the door and have those more functional things really accessible in the space that they need to be. You're so loud today, like always. I also wanted to show you this little nook. This is our stand-up desk. It was actually originally 2 bunk beds that we converted into a full-time garage for our bicycles and things. And then Chris's stand-up desk has a techie he prefers to stand. So this is our little nook. We have a ton of storage back here for things that we don't use as often. So for example, out of season clothes or storage bags. And then down here is actually where we keep Nessie's food. So we've just added these like little knobs that allow you to get in and out super easily. So we've got some of our more kind of hiking boots and Ness's food here for easy access. But yeah, this space would have been wasted if we didn't convert it, because obviously we don't have kids to sit in the bunk beds or lay in the bunk beds. So we've managed to convert it to be functional for us and kind of what needs we have in our lifestyle. So that's our little office. Here she is. Welcome to our new RV kitchen. that is it for our RV tour today, guys. Thanks so much for tagging along. Let me know, drop some questions if there's anything I've missed, if you're curious about how something actually works, if you want to see more footage of like inside the cabinets or have questions about how we actually use the space. Don't be shy, I'm happy to answer. Until next time, stay safe. Mwah.